angles. It's just like, let's say like this. If you want to look at this camera in mammography, you just like, hey, here, boom, there's one shot, there's one view. But in CT, you can go around and look at it from different angles and go up and down. And that's how you can find cancer much more effectively.
Welcome to the Stock Alternatives Podcast, hosted by Jeff Stock, actuary, investor, and private wealth strategist. This podcast is dedicated to helping investors save on taxes, reduce risk, and grow wealth through private wealth strategies and alternative investments.
Hi, this is Jeff Stock, and this is the Stock Alternative Podcast. And today we have Peymon Ghazi. And Peymon is a visionary. He has built a device that could potentially disrupt the mammogram market. And Peymon, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Sounds good. Thanks very much, Jeff, for scheduling this and hosting the show. I'm Dr. Peymon Ghazi. I am the CEO and co-founder of Malcova. We are a medical imaging company. We're based in San Francisco Bay Area, and you kindly put it, but the way that we're going to change the breast cancer radiology is through a new imaging modality, new platform technology that is going to find cancer at the earliest stages of development and provide the images, give the tool to the radiologist that are basically tasked with finding cancer at the early stage.
Great. So how would you compare, and sorry, when I introduced you, I didn't say Dr. Peymon Ghazi.
Not at all. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
That was a lot of work involved, so we got to give you credit. And so how would you compare the devices being built by Malcova compared to current breast cancer imaging, both the mammogram and also things like ultrasound and other devices out there?
Yeah, so there are a bunch of imaging modalities used in radiology for finding cancer. The whole idea is to find cancer at the early stage and find it accurately without causing harm on the patient, and also reducing your cost on the whole radiology department, not wasting a radiologist's time, not wasting anybody's time. So it's a complex problem. The way that is practiced right now, breast cancer imaging or breast cancer dissection within radiology, is a patient receives a mammogram. That is really the first step of entering this breast cancer imaging diagnostic path. So the first starts with mammography. And then mammography is effective for a lot of patients. Half of women in the US have what's known as non-dense breast tissue. So mammography is very effective. But the effectiveness of mammography drops as the breast density increases, which is the other half of women in the US. By the way, we just talk about the US. I can't talk about the other parts of the world. The breast density is a big problem in many parts of the world, especially on the Eastern Asia, the Southern Asia. The incidence of breast density goes higher. But going back to the question that you asked, so first step is mammography, and then after that, many cases the mammography is not. The radiologist has some doubts about the finding in the cancer, or maybe have some suspicions. And then the other imaging modalities come to the picture, specifically ultrasound. So it's a supplemental imaging modality. It's an adjunct to mammography. So if there is a suspicion about the patient having cancer, she's sent to receive a ultrasound imaging. And then, so you go after that, and women who have dense breast tissue, in average, they get 3 or 4 rounds of imaging with different modalities. And a lot of them, most of cases, the radiologist said, okay, go home, you don't have a problem. But in a lot of cases, still there's a little bit of doubt. Is there cancer in the patient's breast or not? So then they get sent to receive biopsy. And biopsy is basically you go you just extract a piece of tissue from the patient's body, and then you send it to pathology. So you look at that tissue under a microscope to see if there is cancer or not. In the US, something that we practice in the US. In the US, well over 70% of the breast cancer biopsies come back negative for cancer, meaning that there is no cancer. It just, when you look at those numbers, it just reveals how inefficient this whole process is. Repeated rounds of imaging, getting biopsy, and of course the patient goes through it, their families go through it. It's stressful, something that we had to, in our personal life, they had to go through it. And then it comes back, most likely to be non-cancerous. So when you look at the big picture, it's ineffective in some cases, and in the other cases, inefficient. So we miss a lot of cancers, and we do a lot that is unnecessary. So this technology that's behind me, I'm excited to give you a demo on this technology that we built, the whole team at Malcova built from scratch. It basically takes on that problem from a basic principles perspective. So let's go after mammography. Is there anything we can do to replace mammography at the first stage, at the first step of imaging? And then once you change that starting point by replacing mammography, not just be an adjunct to mammography, not be a supplement to mammography, but a replacement solution to mammography, then at that point you think you can change the entire path, the entire diagnostic path, make it more efficient, make it more accurate. One thing that I missed to say is, mammography, in mammographies, the audience may know, I'm sure most of them know, but some may not know. In mammography, a woman's breast is compressed between two plates. So images can be acquired. And there's specific reasons why that compression happens. Mammography needs that. It's dependent on the breast compression to provide meaningful, good images to the radiologist. But that compression is painful. A lot of patients find it painful. At best, it's uncomfortable. And that discourages a lot of patients from receiving mammograms, from receiving mammography. My own mother is one of those women. I have to beg her every few years, like, please go get a mammogram. This is the only effective tool for screening application. The only screening tool that we have that is FDA approved. Go get it. And then every few years, every 3-4 years, she says, okay, fine, I'll go get a mammogram. And then she gets a mammogram, and then she comes back right after that. She calls me like, I'm not going to do this again. Boom, done. And then the whole cycle continues again. So this reluctance of patients from receiving mammography is very meaningful. So there have been a lot of studies on this in the US, in Europe. We know exact numbers. So we know in the US, 20% of women don't ever sign up for mammography at all, citing pain. It doesn't mean that these patients, these women don't have cancer. Cancer is there and it's developing, but it's not detected. So there's one part of the mammography then that is inefficient and ineffective to some extent. The other part of it is that it basically pushes a lot of patients to be outside of the care. So a solution like this that doesn't require any compression has a potential to bring more patients to the fold, to detect more cancer at the early stages, and also to be more efficient, to reduce the cost of finding cancer ineffectively. Yeah.
So Peymon, so it sounds like if Malcova works out, which we do think it's going to work out, it'll be earlier detection, it'll be more accurate, less pain for the patients.
Exactly.
And also less radiation, correct?
Yeah, so radiation is a big sticking point when we speak with patients. One of the biggest failures of medical physics as a community has been the communication about the radiation dose. Communicating what the numbers are hasn't been sticking to the patients. So that created space for a lot of misinformation and disinformation about what radiation dose is and what are the numbers within radiation. So there's a lack of information about what radiation means and what this compares
to. How much lower radiation is it compared to?
So yeah, so we have laws in the books. There's a law and that was passed in 90s. It's called the MQSA, Mammography Quality Standardization Act. That was passed in 90s. Both Senator McCain and Senator Biden at the time, they pushed for this law to go. So it's a great thing because it puts a cap on how much radiation dose can be used for screening mammography. So that number is 3 milligray of mean glandular dose for an average size, average density patient, average density person, woman. There's a number, 3 milligray for one view mammography. Standard mammography is they compress it in 2 different directions. So 3 this way, 3 the other way, 6 milligray in total, 3 and 3. 6 milligray in total is what can be spent based on the law. These numbers just slightly little bit lower in Europe, but the radiation dose that we spend, our analysis showed that the dose for that particular average patient is 3.5, a little bit less than 3.4 something milligray per scan. So we are significantly lower that the numbers that we have in the book. So, mammography, in screening mammography now, it's in practice, it's somewhere between 1.2, these are the different studies have been done on this, somewhere between 1.4 to 3 milligray, a little bit less than 3 milligray is what's used on an average breast. Different clinics, they've done large surveys of this. But, again, mammography, it's not conclusive, so you need to get another diagnostic mammogram. Repeated rounds of imaging is a problem. So this adds up. So each one you receive a radiation dose, and it adds up. But this shouldn't scare your audience. I need to be very clear on this. It shouldn't be scaring your audience from receiving mammography yet before we bring our product to the market. Because it's... sorry, that was my mom. Because, there's always a risk benefit analysis that the patients need to go through. What is the risk that I'm accepting, and what is a benefit that I'm going to get? And when you do the math, we can get the math of it if you're interested. You always come up basically.
So doing the test saves way more lives than any radiation damage that could come from it.
Exactly.
By a factor of probably 100, if you do the math.
Several hundred times. Several hundred times. So the way that it works is, so the risk of the chances of a patient, a woman, developing cancer in her lifetime is 1 in 8.
Okay.
So there's 12, if you do the math, if a 12% chance that a person develops cancer, breast cancer in a lifetime. The radiation dose, the risk of radiation dose is that it's a carcinogenic effect, which means receiving radiation dose, it can cause cancer in and of itself. But what's very important to talk about is how much radiation dose results in how much the likelihood of cancer developing in a patient body. And we have a very good understanding based on what happened in World War II, the radiation that happened, or in Chernobyl. There've been very solid understanding of that really high numbers of radiation dose. So we know that in average, somewhere between in every 100 millisievert, which is a specific number, it increases the chances of cancer by 2%. That's just one study that shows.
Okay.
The radiation dose that you get, if it's that 3 milligray, if you convert it to millisievert, that would be, 0.3 millisievert. So think about it. 100 millisievert increases the chance of cancer incidence by 2%. You're at a fraction of that. So the chances of developing cancer as a result of mammography radiation dose is a fraction of 1%, but then you have 12% chance of developing cancer. So the benefit is to get rid of that 12% risk of developing cancer by using an imaging modality that may cause cancer at a fraction of 1%.
So it sounds like if it's 0.3 versus 100, it sounds like if you did the mammography about 300 times, it might increase your cancer risk by.
Let's just do a calculation. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Do the math. 12% divided 0.3%, and you get to a number like 600, kind of a gain.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by several hundred times. We can get into detail math, but
it's interesting.
Let's just talk about, for instance, in terms of the background radiation that I receive, you get it, I get it, but just the virtue of being alive, we always get the background radiation. The sun, we're getting, the radiation from the sun, the earth, things are going on inside of the earth that it just introduces radiation. So constantly we're getting radiation in our body. It's helpful to compare how much of radiation that you will get compared to your background radiation. So for instance, in mammography, if you do the math, the amount of dose that you get in a screening mammography, it's about 3 months of radiation. It's not an accurate number, but if you do the math, you'd always come up with 2 months to 4 months, something like that. A radiation dose that you get from the background. So by just the virtue of being alive, every year you get 4 mammograms worth of radiation dose anyway. So that's something that needs to be communicated to the public. Although, whenever we communicate this thing with medical physicists or physicists, so they always need picky on just the numbers are not quite accurate, 100% accurate, and the background radiation in different parts of the U.S. is different. But I think its communication is very helpful to tell the patient, just compare it to hey, I'll give you an example. I'm sorry, I know you have a question, but I'll give you an example. Right now we are talking the month of May. Okay, so since the beginning of the year until now, which is in the month 5th of the year, it's almost 2 times worth of mammography we have got by just virtue of being alive. So this concept of, no, I don't want to sign up for mammography because it's risky. I want to invite the patient to think about it again, because numbers matter a lot. It's all about numbers. I'll give you another example. I drove to work today. When I drive, there is a risk of having an accident and something really bad happening to me. But I take the risk because it's more convenient than pretty much the only option that I have, because my house is very far from work. But I take that risk of driving to work because the gain is worth it. I want to invite your audience who are interested, think of it that way. Sorry, Jeff, that was a long speech, but I wanted to get that point across.
I remember when I bought one of my houses that they did a radon test, and it had to be below a certain threshold, and I was like, I don't even want it to be close to the threshold because, I know that radiation is not good, but this is even lower than living in a basement probably. Exactly.
So, the radiation, so they're going back to what it is. So this technology is at its core is a new way of doing CT imaging. And CT has traditionally been very high radiation dose. So our innovation, our technology, that brought that radiation dose significantly lower, that right now is at a fraction of mammography. That's what we're proud of.
Okay. How much lower is it than traditional CT? Do you have those numbers?
Yeah, so traditional CT, there are 2 products out there right now that are doing traditional CT. We can get to the detail of it, no problem. But our radiation dose compared to those is somewhere between 20%, 15%, even a little bit less than that, one of those products. So it's a fraction. It's truly a fraction of what they will get. It's not zero. So that's the thing. When you accept the risk of it, there's a tiny little amount of radiation dose that the patient will receive. But they need to do, patient and radiologist, whoever, and their family members, they need to do the math. And these numbers, they need to know the numbers. And that's what I'm trying to communicate. That's what being always upfront about the risk that you will accept, but then potentially the gain that you will get.
And the gain that you get is that you're going to detect
cancer at early stage.
Earlier. And if you catch it early,
it's all about early.
You're likely to treat it and have a positive outcome. Exactly. Do you have some stats on that? So if you say the typical person starts mammography at age whatever age they started at. What age did they start it at?
40, it's recommended.
At 40. Okay, so at age 40, you start mammography, and you're going to catch it every once in a while. You're going to catch cancer or precancer risk. Now, how does Malcova's device improve the detection? Like, do you have any guesses based off your earlier work? I know it's just a guess because you haven't done it on humans yet, but do you have a guess at kind of how much earlier it might detect cancer?
Yeah, so right now, let's talk about mammography. So mammography's sensitivity in finding cancer, meaning that the likelihood of finding cancer in mammography,
Yep.
we know the numbers. So for half of women in the US who have what's known as non-dense breast tissue, the chance is the sensitivity of mammography is well over 80%, 85%, or sometimes some reports say it's 90%, meaning that half of women who have non-dense breast tissue, if they have cancer, mammography, there is 85% chance that mammography is going to find it, which is great,
Okay.
good number. Still, that 15%, there's a 15% chance that
not
it
100
misses.
though.
It's not 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a problem. So that's the 85%. The sensitivity of mammography depends on the breast density. So the denser the breast gets, the more the sensitivity drops. So there are reports that the extreme case, the extremely dense patients, which is about 10% of the female population in the US,
Yep.
the sensitivity drops well below 50%. There was a paper that came out. The sensitivity is like 34%. So it's less than a coin flip that mammography receives it.
And that's why
Yeah.
people like my wife have to do ultrasound and other stuff.
Exactly. So, I mean, and the radiologists, the care providers, they just have to throw everything at the problem, because mammography is ineffective for those, or not as effective as it is for those patients as it is for the non-dense breast. So in our solution, we want to close that gap. So again, it was at 85%, just well below 50%. We want to bring it up. And when we did the math, that means every year we will find 55,000 more cancer at the early stage.
Wow.
And that means a lot.
How many scans?
So in the US, so in the US, every year, about right now, these days, or these numbers are going up every year. Right now, about 300,000 women in the US this year will develop aggressive breast cancer, meaning that this is life-threatening. This cancer is coming to get you. 300,000. I live in Berkeley. And the city right next to me is in Emerville and Richmond. That is exactly the same amount of the population of all those cities put together. In 1 year, we get so many cancer cases in the US. It's the most common type of aggressive cancer in women, and it's only in the US. Out of all these, the patients who get breast cancer, this year is estimated that 44,000 women will die because of breast cancer.
44,000 out of 300,000?
Yes. A lot of these patients,
About
this
50.
is what, so that's the death. A lot of patients, they opt for, they need to go through the treatment, and we have good treatments available right now. They go through treatment. A lot of women, they receive mastectomy, which is an operation of completely removal of the breast organ as an organ. About 100,000 mastectomies are performed in the US. Now, it's something that is now, patients talk about it, the women who have breast cancer, they talk about it, and it's a great thing, because something, as a country, we should be really proud of this thing, that this is completely open, and advocates, women say, hey, I had cancer, I received mastectomy, and my cancer is managed, mostly gone, as far as we know. That's a great thing. It should be celebrated. But again, at the end of the day, it's cutting off an organ. So it's not a normal thing. I wouldn't cut off my hand just voluntarily. It just doesn't make sense. It's also that the breast tissue, which has to do with the identity of a lot of patients. So that shouldn't be taken lightly at all. So we have death cases. We have a lot of mastectomies. And the number of cancer cases that are in the US are happening is pretty much everywhere in the world, but especially in the US, the numbers are on the rise. So the size of the problem is getting bigger, and we don't really have an effective solution right now for finding cancer at early stage. That's what we're trying to do here, to find it at early stage, when it's treatable, when it's easily treatable. That's the difference between a lot of, and there's no one type of breast cancer, but the majority of breast cancer types, when you find it early stage, you can really treat the patient. This patient can just move on and live her life. But it's all about finding it at early stage, when it's 2 millimeter, when it's tiny little thing, not it's like large and it's palpable on the breast. And that becomes really difficult for treating. But
So the more time that goes by, the more likely you are to die, which is why they recommend mammography every year, and which is why your device is going to find it earlier and make it easier to treat.
Exactly.
So have you tried to do a calculation on how many lives this will save if everything works out the way that you think that it's going to work out?
So that's a complex question, and it just that a lot goes through it. So I don't want to put a number right now onto it. But what we know is that by closing the gap that I shared with you between dense breast and non-dense breast, we'll manage to find 55,000 early stage cancer. When we think about it, that 55,000 can move on to get larger. I don't know how many of them is going to end up going to unfortunately the death of a patient, or really aggressive treatment options that they have to go through to stay alive. I don't know that number yet. But yeah, we want to find more cancers.
Right?
Yeah. So
that's only in the US, 55,000.
Exactly. It's in Eastern Asia. In the US, we have half of women have dense breast tissue. And the numbers are much larger in East Asia. For instance, China, it's 65%. Study came out in Japan. Shows it's basically 80% of patients have that. In Southern Asia is the same. So the majority of adult women have what's known as dense breast tissue, and we know what mammography can do, what in non-dense breast, and we know what it cannot do in a dense breast women. So the problem is really large. The incidents are also going up. Now we can go to the details of it. It's really not my expertise. Like, why are the numbers are rapidly going? I mean, the rate of growth of breast cancers are also accelerating. It's not just a linear path. It's just going up, and the rate of it is also getting faster and faster. I have my own theories about this, but it's really not nice.
What are the theories that you're not allowed to say that we're going to say? And I'll give you my theories if you give me your theories. And I know none of this is like off the record. What's your theory?
No, it's okay. So right now I'm just putting down my hat as the leader of Malco. But my theories as a person is that we have lifestyle choices. I spend a lot of time in the office, and working a lot, not having that much of a physical activity. Our diet is problematic, unless we're very careful about this. But let's be honest, in the US, our diet is not in general population, is not as good as it could be, and so that contributes. You have the pollutions, we have the stress. All of these are epigenetic impacts on development in cancer. Cancer is, you cannot develop. You cannot point to one thing as the source of developing cancer, although in some cases that happens. But it's a combination of many different things. I'll give you an example, Jeff. This is something that there's a lot of misinformation about this. A lot of people think that breast cancer happens because I have a genetic, my mom had it, or maybe somebody in my family. Only 20% of breast cancers. Only 20%.
The BRCA gene or something like that, or
BRCA genes, yes. So there's there. But the only 20% of the breast cancer that happens to the patients who had some sort of a history in their family. Only 20%. So 80% of the cancer happened to the patients that they're like, I had no idea. I didn't know anybody in my family. How come I developed cancer? So I just wanted to dispel that myth too. What are your theories about developing cancer? Why do
I agree with you on the diet. So, I mean, I don't know as much about it as you do. However, I think the the more obese somebody is, the more likely they are to have breast cancer.
Absolutely.
And then obviously obesity is increasing. So, the more I think we get outside and exercise and keep the weight down by cutting back on sugar and chips and all those addictive foods that taste so good, I think
Exactly.
that probably is one of the keys to it. And there's probably another factor around like personality and outlook. I think just learning how to relax and to kind of get in the Zen mode, I think reduces stress and anxiety, which I think probably improves cancer risk as well. But that's just my theory. I get fascinated. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but a couple of years ago, I met this woman. Her name was Anita Morjani, and Wayne Dyer ended up making her kind of famous because she had a near-death experience, and then she got rid of her cancer, and it was kind of like a miracle. So I look at that, and she kind of attributed it to like having a different outlook and a little bit of a mindset. But I don't really understand all the details. But I hope in like 20, 30 years we'll understand this a lot better than we do now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And
I mean,
it's
there's
just one anecdotal case as well, but yeah.
I mean, there's so much research going on, right? Like, why do we have this? Like, why is cancer happening more and more? And I'm glad that, right now in the government level, we're acknowledging that. And there's now movements to change the diet, or just encourage people to just go outside and just take a walk around for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes a day. That helps. We don't have a direct number on, the 15 minutes, how much is going to reduce my risk of developing cancer? But everybody, it's just common sense. It's just better for you.
Exactly. And I think even though the sunshine gives you radiation, I've seen a lot of data that shows that the more time you spend in the sun, the longer you live. Because my background actually is an actuary, so we're kind of known for studying mortality and life expectancy. And so I look up everything that could potentially increase life expectancy. And spending time in the sun, especially in the early morning and the evening, seems to be a high predictor of longevity.
Yeah.
Also, like positivity. So this is an interesting one. They did a study on these nuns that they had to write a paper before they became a nun about why they wanted to be a nun. And they looked at it 50 years later or some long period of time later. And it was completely blind. And they had these judges kind of rank them by how optimistic they were. And the most optimistic quartile, they were almost exclusively all still alive. And the least optimistic quartile, they were almost exclusively already dead. So the attitude and your kind of human nature, I think, plays a huge role in longevity and sickness.
Yeah. And I think we know why that happens because of the hormonal cocktail that is going on in your body. It basically changes based on the attitude towards the challenges that you have, how you take on the challenges, how stressed out you get, or you directly go after finding a solution. That directly impacts the hormones that we produce in our body. And of course, cancer is a result of things happening in your body. That has a direct, I can easily find a line between the way that we practice problems or the way that we approach problems in our life, and it happens to everybody. Find a line between that and physically having problems. It just makes sense, and I know it makes sense to everybody. And you can go back in history and just poetry and literature from hundreds and thousands of years ago. It's all about, take on the problems, analyze it, and be objective as much as you can. There are problems that it just like completely overwhelms people, and we know that. But as much as you can, just take on it, relax, and try to find a solution and move on. That's better for our health, for sure.
I'd love to see how the Malcova device works. Now, you call it like what is exactly the official term for it? So I know it's like a narrow beam, and I've heard the term like Monarch. But how do you describe this, and what would you?
Yeah, so the core technology is new way of doing CT. or CAT. It's also known as CAT scan. It's a new way of doing it. It's the geometry, the image acquisition is different. The way that we do the scan is different. That we call narrow beam CT. We could coin a term for that. But the rendition of that core technology, that's our platform technology that has applications for many different applications, with size of radiology. But for breast cancer radiology, the intended name for the product is Breast Monarch, because the device that the design I will show you. So it kind of looks like a butterfly, and the Monarch butterfly, the state butterfly of the state of California. So we thought it was a cool name for it. So this system that you see behind me, we went through 4 different generations of developing this technology from basic principles, from ground up, to get it to this level. So this is the system that we're going to use for our first in-human study at Yale University. So I'm gonna, is that okay if I give you a demo?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sure. So this is the first clinical prototype for us. So this is the imaging zone. This is where the breast is going to be positioned. Imagine I'm a woman. If I'm a patient, and you want to image my left breast, so I can approach the device. I easily position myself on the device like this. I place my left breast within this imaging zone here, like so, and I lean in, just like hugging a yoga ball. And imaging is
very comfortable.
It is very comfortable, frankly.
Yeah.
I am very. I don't want to take a nap to move in though this recording is. But yeah, so you image my left breast. So when it's done, imaging is done in well less than a minute, and then you can go around. When I image my right breast, I just walk around and do the same thing on the right side. So it's completely symmetrical for left breast and right breast. There's no difference. We've been, by the way, talking a lot about the women with, developing breast cancer. It happens to men too. Of course, we have 300,000 women developing cancer this year. It's estimated about 3,000 men will develop breast cancer. So the chance of men getting breast cancer is not zero. By the way, we need to get mammography too. So if there is a male patient and they need their cancer detected, the first line again is mammography. And imagine how hard it is. I have a cousin. It's just a dude my age. It's just he's a grown man in his 40s, and he felt some lumps, a few lumps in his breast, and he was sharing that he spoke with his doctor, and the doctor said, "Hey, go get a mammogram." And he's a skinny guy, so it was very hard for him and the radiologist or the technologist, who was doing the mammogram on his breast. And he came out, and I asked him, "Hey, how was the experience?" He said that was one of the worst experiences of my life. It's a tough dude. He's gone through things in his life, and going through mammography was experiencing a tough thing. It should really communicate this problem to your male audience too. But going back to the demo, so the imaging is done. There is no change in the throughput of the patient. That's where the breast is going to be located. Nothing touches the breast. Talking about the discomfort and the pain that the patient goes through in mammography. Here, nothing touches the breast. Only the gravity pulls the breast down. And underneath this is where the imaging is happening, that narrow beam CT. And narrow beam CT, we measure this breast from many different angles. So this overall coverage that you see here is 100-degree coverage. So the source goes around and measures it from different angles. It's just like, let's say, like this. If you want to look at this camera in mammography, you just like, hey, here, boom, there's one shot, there's one view. But in CT, you can go around and look at it from different angles and go up and down. And that's how you can find cancer much more effectively. Like in mammography, imagine my right hand. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. I was going to say, if I zoom in to the device, is the breast actually going into a hole there? It's hard to see.
This is the imaging zone. Yes, there is there is an imaging zone with a diameter of 25 centimeters, which is ample enough for covering 99% of the U.S. population, and it's deep. So the gravity pulls the breast down. Nothing touches the breast, just the gravity pulls the breast down. All you need to do, the patient needs to do, and the technologist who's assisting your patient, is to position your breast within this imaging zone.
Right in there.
Right here.
And there's a little gap for the breast to be comfortable in there. And then you sit for a minute and it does all the readings.
Well, less than a minute. So, and then the imaging is done. Matter of a few seconds, and you're done. You just walk away.
That's amazing.
One image, my right breast. You can't go to the right breast. So you have the left breast, the image of the left breast. You have the image of the right breast, and then you show it to radiologist. If then one thing that they do in mammography, screening mammography specifically, they mammogram both breasts, and they look at the mammograms side by side, because if there's an asymmetry between the texture of the breasts, there's a red flag. This is exactly something that you get here.
Now I have a question. We learn more about AI getting better and better.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any technology that's helping to read these devices that will improve potentially the accuracy of the readings?
Absolutely. So the images, this device that you see, this hardware that you see behind me, it acquires the images. That's where the scan happens. But the next step after a scan is we process this raw data to turn it into a beautiful three-dimensional image as the radiologist can look at. Another things that we have in this technology, that we also gather information about the tissue types on the fly. So we have 3 dimensions in space that we gather, and we have information about what type of tissue type is. Every tiny little detail of the breast, we know exactly what kind of tissue type it is. That's the 4th dimension. And in some applications that we need to do contrast injection for the diagnostic applications, for the cases that radiologists really has some suspicions about it, we have a 5th dimension of information that we gather information over time. So the information is very thorough, very comprehensive, that a radiologist can get at. So it's one thing to show this information to radiologists. The other side of it is, can we use AI? Can we assist the radiologist in consuming this wealth of information and have a better diagnostic, and not exhaust and not make the radiologist feel tired? And that's where the AI comes to the picture. That's the other pretty much of 50% of the operation, is the software development and assisting the radiologist in consuming the data and going through the data and have a better diagnostic. My co-founder is a cognitive neuroscientist. So the cognitive neuroscientist is a person who basically gets the visual information. That's her expertise. He gets the visual information and makes sense of what this visual information means. And that whole process of looking at the mammogram, for instance, and the process of going into to the radiologist's memory mechanism and the way that they look at the information and how they make a diagnostic call, that's a very complex process. And that's why radiologists, they go through years and years in residency to learn how to develop that process. Our job, that 50% of that we were talking about, our job is, can we assist the radiologist? And at the end of the day, it's a doctor who's making a diagnostic call. But can we assist a radiologist by giving her better tools? And one tool is to build a platform that develops images that are more effective, that she can look at. The other side is that, can we find AI? Can you develop AI to enhance these images for her, or to point out parts of the image? Hey, take a look at this part. Take a look at that part. There may be something in there. And that's the other 50% of our operation. AI is, the use of AI in medicine. Radiology was one of the first places that the AI was used, because there's images, and AI was very effective at very early stages with images. So radiologist was one of those fields that really fast started adopting different AI methodologies. and we're taking advantage of it. It's our friend. Let's just put it that way.
One of my challenges when I had an imaging done in the past was they said, okay, like I could tell that the person who was doing it was not the radiologist, but they knew exactly what they were seeing. And I was like, can you tell me what you're seeing? They're like, no, like the radiologist has to be the one to do that. And I wonder if in the future there'll be something more real time where AI just says, based off what we just saw, there's a 98% chance that this is what it is. We'll still have a radiologist look at it to make sure. But I bet you we're going to get information quicker and sooner because of AI.
Yeah, AI is a friend, but at the end of the day, diagnosis happens using a human doctor makes a diagnosis. So what we can do as a technology provider, as a technologist, is to give him the best tools that they have. So one is hardware, of course, and the other one is better AIs. But I'm not in favor, and this is something that in radiology is a hot topic right now, that we need to communicate this to the public, that AI is not making a diagnosis. AI is a tool that a human radiologist or human doctor uses to improve their diagnosis.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I've used AI to like ChatGPT. I take a picture of my skin and where there's a funny mark, and I'm like, what is this? And usually it says, it's probably this or this or this. And that's probably accurate most of the time. So that's where we're moving.
Make sure you talk to the doctor, Jeff.
But also, I don't have any problems right now. But it's kind of nice for people who don't like to go to the doctor, to have another alternative. Yeah. But absolutely, and you can't just take a picture of your breast with a camera and detect breast cancer. So obviously, this can be a game changer. So what's the pathway to marketability for Malcova? So I know right now you're in like a seed round, and I'm an investor, just to kind of caveat the audience. But tell us about what has to happen for this to become reality, where women can be and lives can, men and women, lives can be saved from this device.
Yeah. So for the kind of a impact that we want to have in radiology, which is large in our view, we need to have a pivotal trial, what's known as a pivotal clinical trial, meaning that we need to go through a clinical study. So stepping back, right now the technology is developed. We are going to send this to Yale, and they're going to do a pilot study. That's a pilot study. That's just the initial study. It's a small scale study to get a sense of what the images look like on actual humans, so actual patients, and learn from it. So that's pretty much the last step before going into the clinical trial. So the Yale study right now is what's right in front of us, and it's going to finish in 6 months to a year. And then after that, what's going to kick in after that is a clinical trial, the pivotal study that we need to run. And that study we're anticipating is going to last about 2 years to complete. So our hopes to bring this product to market in 2028 and last quarter. So what we need from this point to get there is, of course, we are closing this round of fundraising right now. And we need to go through another round of imaging, of course, and a round of fundraising after the Yale study to raise the capital that we need for running that pivotal trial. And then once we get the results from that pivotal trial, we submit it to FDA. And of course, we're going to be in constant communication with FDA throughout the process, to communicate with them, to report to them, and answer the questions as we progress. But at the end of the day, we submit all the information, and hopefully we gain the approval and bring the product to market in just a few years.
Question for you. Are there some countries that don't require the same level of rigor before going to market? Like, for example, you could potentially put the product in, Mexico. I'm not saying Mexico, but like some other place, and start using it on people, and then show that it's working and working faster, and potentially accelerate your mission.
Yeah, there are options. Yes. Yes, exactly. We've been looking into this for a long time, and we're taking it seriously. But at the end of the day, the largest sector of breast cancer radiology in pretty much throughout the world is in the U.S. And the dynamics of the market, it's very informed. The science is very open. Everybody knows about this. Everybody is communicating. There are conferences that everybody goes through in the US. So really the center of innovation within my field really happens in the US. That's where the problem is the biggest. That's where the reward is the biggest. So our focus right now, but in the process of getting there, we are looking at the options that we have to maybe go international and launch the product there and bring it to US. That's one option that we have. We're not there yet. It's something that we are right now just educating ourselves, studying.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said the trials will last about 6 months to do. Why does it take so long? Is it hard to find people to volunteer?
Our first study. Yeah, our first study. Our first study is 6 months to a year, and that's anticipated to take that much time. It's because it's a pivotal trial. It's a voluntary program. The study design at Yale is such that the patients volunteer for this, and these are the patients that are most likely have cancer. These are we are recruiting the patients who are on their path to receive biopsy. Not we, by the way. It's the Yale University radiologists taking care of that part. Why does it take long? It may actually wrap up much faster than that. We don't know, but we're right at the worst case scenario, somewhere around 6 months to 9 months, so we can complete the study. And then one part of it is acquiring the images from the patients. Of course, the other part is to present this information to the radiologist and get the data and analyze the data, and that's going to take time too. And report those results to our community. That takes time too. So putting it all together, we're setting aside months. We want to do it completely properly. So, the data acquisition, the processing, the reading of the images, and communicating to the radiology community it goes all in one lump in my mind, and that's our anticipation. Yeah.
Do you have any asks, like, for this to be more successful or to move quicker? Is there any introduction or some way that someone like me or a listener could potentially help other than write a check?
Yeah, well, writing a check would be nice. But right now, right at this seed stage, we've been very successful in raising money since our founding. We raised over $6 million through National Institutes of Health and National Science Foundation to build this technology. So yes, the capital is important, but at this stage, we're at a seed stage. We're very interested in talking to whoever is interested. So if there's anybody who's interested in sharing their knowledge with us or sharing their experience with us, patients, the cancer survivors, of course, radiologists, the investors, technologists, it doesn't really matter. Whoever is interested in getting on this journey with us, we would love to talk to them. So I don't want to specify a particular hat that a person needs to have. Even if you just want to share your experience, hey, this is what I went through as I got my mammogram or whatever, ultrasound. And this is something that we want to listen to. We've been listening to it for years. We document. We have a large document that basically detail by detail tells us this patient said this radiologist said this. And when you put it all together, a clear view starts to show up. And it's something in business school they call the customer discovery process. You need to go out in the field, talk to people, and get the information, write it down, and then get the consensus. And then when you do that, the need becomes really clear. That's why we built this technology, because of that need. In any business venture, what really matters is to find where the need is. If you target a wrong need at the wrong time, either or, the business is going to fail. So what we try to do is to find a perfect solution. Yeah.
I mean, you solve a need. Like, women are getting mammograms because it hurts, and it doesn't work on half of them, and you solve both of those needs. So it's just, for me, I'd love to see this come to be used like tomorrow rather than waiting a couple of years, for different trials. I understand that's important, but how do you know that it's going to work? So I read something about you had like a twin breast that you could use it on that detects, it could detect almost like a real breast.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
share what the twin breast is? And maybe you have one to show us.
Sure. Yeah, I have a physical one. So what, it's a big question. Before going to a clinical trial, how do you know the effectiveness of your system? And it's something that in our field, in my field, in radiology, it leads to a lot of companies, some companies that go to the clinical trial without knowing what the sensitivity of their device is. I have two clear examples of two companies that they did this, spent millions on clinical trials and fail at the end, because at the end of the day, what they came out with didn't really match what they had at the beginning. So we don't want to take that. So that's where this digital physical twins, the technology that we developed on the side, becomes very important. Here's what we did. We took open source data sets of the breast MRI. And then we took these breast MRI data sets. Breast MRI is very low resolution. That's just the nature of MRI. The resolution is not good. But what you need for early cancer detection is a resolution. So what we did, we took this breast MRI data sets that are just available out there. And then we went through the pathology and physiology textbooks to understand how breast tissue grows in a breast, how the breast tissue, at the end of the day, the breast tissue is responsible for lactation, just in case the woman becomes pregnant. The textural, the different tissue types start to develop, and then how you transfer the milk that is produced in tiny little ducts in different parts of a breast, how that the milk is transferred to the nipple, so the woman can nurse the baby. That is the internal anatomy of a breast. So we went through the pathology textbooks and the physiology to understand how this process works. And then we basically incorporated whatever we learned from that process. We coded it up and we transferred it to these breast MRI cases. In other words, the breast MRI in an image of a breast MRI for us is like a petri dish that we start to grow different tissue types within it that is realistic, that is in line with what the breast tissue of real humans look like. That study was funded by NIH, and the results, this is not what we were anticipating at the beginning of the project when we started it, but the results were amazing. So in of itself, it can be a product on the side. But that's what the digital twin means. A digital twin is getting a breast of a person, open source, de-identified images that are available in the internet, getting them and then grow tissue within those images. And then you come up with a digital model. And then we thought, okay, can we go one step further beyond that? Can we develop, turn it into a physical thing so we can put it in our device and image it? And that's what developed. Let me just get you this, an example of this physical twin. So this is what that physical twin looks like for one particular patient, one particular breast. So this was the breast MRI of a person. It's completely de-identified. We don't know who it was, but we got the data that's available out there. And then we turn it into a digital twin. We grow very detailed different tissue types, realistic then. And then we turn them into a physical, what we call a phantom. So each slice of this physical, and what we call this a physical twin. Right. Each slice of it, I'm not sure if you can see it, but each slice of it has different tissue type represented in them. And we developed a detailed methodology of how we're going to do it. So if you go through it, there are different tissue types that are represented in this physical twin. Now, this is a physical twin. We can image this.
And you could put like a piece of corn in there and it would find it and
Oh, so we have actually incorporated we have synthesized the cancer within this breast model, and it's there. So that's how we know that this system is going to work, because we have already studied this example and many other examples of physical digital twins. We've incorporated cancer, and then we have looked at the images, and you get a sense of like, what is the power of our device? That's the physical and digital twins, that this process that I shared with you, it informs us about the sensitivity of this the solution down the line when we
one thing that I'm wondering. So I know you developed this and you've been using digital twins or digital breast device. Have you ever just for fun, tried to take a reading on yourself or on your wife or maybe on your friends?
Oh, we have relatives are lining up. No, the answer is no, but we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this before sending the device to Yale, maybe, or maybe we're just gonna sign up for the study ourselves and get it done. Yeah,
I mean, I'd be
but
curious to see it myself. It feels safe enough, I don't know if my man boobs would fit in there, but I'd like to try it.
Oh, anybody, any breast. We developed the system. I'll give you another part of it. So as men, we have smaller breasts, but nonetheless, every human has breasts. So
yeah,
the key feature of this device, of this technology, is that it gives the entire coverage of the entire breast tissue, especially the part of the tissue, the breast tissue that goes into the underarm.
Oh, okay.
We have lymph nodes there. It's called the axillary region. So when I position myself on this device, we have 6 centimeters, like two inches coverage above the sternum line. So this is the sternum, the bone that you have between your breasts. This is called the sternum. We have 2 inches coverage that goes way back about that. I'm giving you this long answer to the question of how much of the coverage we will have. And the answer is, we designed the system when it comes to the coverage question. From the get-go, we thought, let's just design a system that can image man in terms of the coverage. Can we do that? If we do that, we can definitely get all the breast tissue. In man or woman, doesn't really matter.
Yeah, maybe they'll start doing diagnostics for men in the future.
Yeah, I mean, the patient is a patient. Doesn't really matter. Cancer grows.
Yeah,
whether we like it or not. Cancer doesn't care.
So what does one of these devices cost, like compared to a traditional mammogram or a higher end mammogram?
Yeah, so the higher end mammogram, we did a thorough cost analysis. It doesn't make sense to bring out a technology that costs $1 million to a market where somebody can go get a mammography unit for $350,000. So a high end mammo sells right now between like $300 to $600, depends on the bells and whistles attached to it. So we did the cost analysis, and we want the price of this device to be completely in line with what the current mammography is. And that goes to the core of a technology. What allows for this technology to be so affordable? It goes to that we built CT from the basic principles, and in the process, we really reduced the cost to very low levels. In my view, I've shared this several times. In my view, what we did to CT through this technology is pretty much what Tesla did to the electric cars. They brought it down. Electric cars existed before Tesla came to the picture, but they brought it down to the basic principles. Like, what are the main components of building electric cars? And then that allowed them to really significantly reduce the cost. And that's something that the model is now everybody else is copying. That's what we did with this technology. We brought the concept of CT, CAT scan, to the basic principles, to how we learn it in textbooks. And then we try to come up with different geometries with different components, much more affordable, much more lower cost. That allows us to bring out this technology to the market, providing a healthy 75 to 80% margin over the cost of goods spent on this, still put the price of the product on par with the high-end mammography today.
That's amazing. Well, one thing I'm committed to doing maybe after this call is I'm going to try to calculate how many lives this is going to save worldwide over a 20-year period. That's an actuarial calculation, and That's my background in actuary. So you're going to catch 55,000 more of them. You're going to get the 20% of the people who don't do mammograms today because it's not comfortable. You get half of those to come in. You're going to find, on one out of 8 of those will actually have cancer at some time in their life, and 15% of those are going to die. So you do all the math. This is going to save a lot of lives.
The question of expanding care is so important, the concern. Like one thing is that to develop a technology that finds at 100% accuracy. But if it's not designed to expand the care to the people who don't sign up for care today, what's the point? There is no point in doing that.
Yeah.
That's not the path that we want to take.
I have another sort of random question. So does this detect other cancers besides breast? Like, I don't know if you can, like, testicular cancer. Could someone put their balls in there and they would read that as well?
So we need to design it differently. So our core technology is a new way of doing CT. So we're already thinking about other diseases, especially for the problems that we have in our head, stroke, the cancers of the head. This is a very big problem in radiology. It's one of those unsolved problems. So the answer to your question is yes, absolutely. But we need to change the way that the patient position is going to look on the system.
Okay.
But yeah, we are excited about this. We have a clinical collaborator at UCSF, and that's a project that it's still in the research and development phase right now. But that's our next product to go after the imaging head. And we're thinking about other application, imaging extremities or other problems. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I randomly picked this testicular, but just
because you're a man. But think about it.
I'd rather have that than like somebody try to feel me and figure out where there's cancer. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I give you an example. Now we're talking about different types of cancer. One of the challenges that we have in radiology, we talk about the breast cancer, which is more happening to women, but to men we have prostate cancer, and it happens. The 1 in 8 chances of developing breast cancer in women. There's 1/12 in chance of men developing prostate cancer. So we know. I mean, a lot of people have the problems. I have in my family. It's a big problem. So prostate is an organ that is within the pelvis. So it's really busy down there, and there's just a whole lot going on. There's many different organs out there. So how do you image? If it's a tiny little cancer, how you image in a prostate? So the methodologies have improved significantly, but one core problem within CT, which is really the workhorse of radiology, one core problem has always remained the same, and that is the problem of scatter or the contamination in raw data as you do the image acquisition. So we build a system that doesn't pick up scatter at all. I talk about the reinvention of CT quite a bit. The main reinvention is that we don't have scatter. We don't have garbage in our raw data anymore. And that's why our image quality is so much higher, and we can significantly reduce the radiation dose. So yes, we're thinking about other cancers. Yeah, the prostate is a very difficult organ to image. It would be nice to find cancer at early stages there with much more effective solutions. Head is a extremely difficult organ because we all as humans have skulls that's protecting the brain, but the skull even of itself is basically stopping all the images. It reduces the quality of images in CT and the other imaging modalities. Basically, ultrasound is useless in the skull because the sound waves don't go to the brain, to the skull. So that's a big problem. Sports medicine is a huge market that we're looking into down the line in imaging extremities, our hands, legs. That's a big problem. Everybody's looking for a small footprint, portable device that you can deploy it to wherever that the athlete is practicing, so that something happens right there, you can actually get the sense of what's going on. So these are the things that we have in line in our mindset.
So if someone's watching this and they want to develop a screener for prostate cancer, would you be like open to open sourcing your technology? Yeah.
Open sourcing. So that's a conversation we need to have.
Or they lease the technology, or they can figure out a way to collaborate and compensate you for using
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, of course, it needs to make sense, but it's a big problem. So if they're really mission oriented into go after solving that problem, as it's something I'm really, very interested. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It needs to make sense, but 100%. 100%. We're always seeking for collaborators. In Yale and UCSF that I just mentioned, our clinical collaborators. It all came to it happened because of our mindset, and that mindset is that if we want to solve a big problem, it takes a village to solve it. So,
what about if like a big company, that already has some of the existing technology, maybe they don't want to lose market share? Would you, if they said they wanted to help you to get it to the finish line faster, and then get a share of the company? Okay.
Yeah, understood. Of course. Yeah.
So I think there's a huge opportunity for the right audience, the right person watching this, to reach out to you or to me to make a difference.
To make a difference. Let's make a difference.
And hopefully make some money in the process. But I think they're both important.
Thank you for listening to the Stock Alternatives Podcast with Jeff Stock. At the end of the day, wealth is determined not only by how much you earn, but also by how much you keep through smart tax strategies. For business owners, retirees, and high-income professionals seeking greater returns, steady income, tax relief, purpose-driven investments, and portfolio diversification, visit stockalternatives.com to learn more or schedule a personal meeting with Jeff Stock.